Well, welcome to the next episode of the Christ-centered cosmic civilization, and we're still in our series on Narnia. I think we'll do another one of the novels, and maybe then we'll pause to look at the whole issue of the planets in Narnia, or maybe we'll leave that to the end. But let's get into the next one of the books, and it's The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which in a way follows up from right on the heels, really, of the Prince Caspian story. It's in the same time frame, the same characters who were involved in Prince Caspian's victory are now doing something that comes after that, which is this voyage of the Dawn Treader. And so we can picture, as the novel begins, a painting on the wall, a ship at sea, its prow cutting through the waves, and suddenly the painting comes alive. The water pours into the room, and three children, Edmund, Lucy, and now the cousin, Eustace, they're swept into Narnia. And that's the beginning. It takes us on then a story of pilgrimage, transformation, testing. And then now we very much have this idea that Aslan has a home, and the far country that Aslan is in is somewhere that can be kind of travelled to, but we discover not really travelled to. It's in the extreme east, which is an unusual thing, because normally in biblical terms it's to the west, the extreme west. And then Tolkien, of course, in Middle-earth, it's to the extreme west where the heavenly land is. C.S. Lewis gives it a different flavour by flipping it around and having it as the birthplace of the sun rather than the place where the sun is going to. And it kind of works. It's just not entirely the symbolism of the Bible. But that's okay, because the concept works the same. And it's this journey that becomes, it's less and less about geography and more about some other kind of journey as it goes on. So there's kind of three themes. I don't always get through all my themes that I've made, that I note, but I would like to see if we can explore these three themes of the transformation and sanctification that's going on, and then the concept of this pilgrimage toward Aslan's country, and then temptation, the testing of character. And that's where we are with this novel. It's about the Christian life, and it's the inner journey of it, that becoming a Christian is not static. It's not that there are some aspects where we'll say, once a person trusts in Jesus and becomes a follower of Jesus, they are righteous, and we can say they simply are righteous, and that is a fixed status. But in so many ways, it's not something that's fixed and static, but that becoming a Christian is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of this journey into the life of God, and we are being drawn further in, higher up. Some Christians become very nervous of that language, because the idea that there is a process, they're worried that it's like a process that you won't be saved unless you complete the process. But that's not how it is. Salvation is a gift that's given at the very beginning of this following Jesus. As soon as a person trusts in him and follows him, they are saved, they are righteous. They don't have to have progressed on this journey. But nevertheless, the journey is there. And what is the goal of the journey is to be perfect, even as our Father in heaven is perfect, or to imitate Christ. Paul uses that language of take off the old humanity, put on the new humanity, or this pilgrimage from Egypt through the wilderness wanderings and into the promised land across the Jordan. All of this language is in the Bible, and that's the kind of theme that we're exploring with the Dawn Treader. A voyage, a pilgrimage toward the far country where Aslan, the home of Aslan. So the Dawn Treader, it's a ship of exploration. King Caspian has set sail to find the 7 lost lords of Narnia who were exiled by his uncle Miraz. And that's we note that in Prince Caspian. These 7 lords have gone journeying to the west, and this is the follow-up to that. Edmund and Lucy join King Caspian, along with this reluctant cousin Eustace, who has not experienced Narnia before, and he is not yet a Narnian, as becomes apparent. The voyage takes them from island to island, and each island presents a new challenge, a new temptation, a new lesson. And it's, as we'll see, each island is not just physically challenging, it's about something else. It's not a story of great battles or political intrigue. It's a story of inner battles, of spiritual growth, of the journey of the soul, as our ancestors were. They were much more comfortable with that language of a journey of the soul. The idea of or a mystical ascent to draw ever nearer to the life of God as we put off the flesh and walk ever more according to the Spirit, or walking in step with the Spirit. And that way, I think I found it good the way the Puritans would speak of this journey, this process of sanctification, whereby when we first following Christ, or early in the journey, there are sins in our lives that we don't even notice. But as we go on and draw nearer to Christ in our practical lived experience, that we're living out or working out the righteousness that has been given to us, what we discover is we don't necessarily feel that less sinful. We might feel more sinful as the journey goes on, because we become increasingly aware of sins that once we didn't even notice, we didn't even know they existed. But as we get closer to the far country of Christ and the Father's home, as that happens, so the sins that are in us become more visible. Well, that's what's going on. Let's think then about this transformation and sanctification, because perhaps the most famous moment in the voyage of the Dawn Treader is the transformation of Eustace. Eustace begins as selfish, arrogant, a kind of whiny boy. He's always not content about anything. He doesn't like anything, and he's quite insulting. And he nearly gets killed by Reepicheep for being so rude, really, and selfish. He mocks Narnia. He despises adventure. He's boring, as selfish people always are. He thinks only of himself. But then they get on Dragon Island. He is transformed, and literally so. His greed leads him to a dragon's hoard, and he wakes to find himself turned into a dragon. And that is C.S. Lewis's picture of sin here. And there's this bracelet on his arm that has this effect upon him. And some people have said it's reminiscent of the ring in Tolkien, this piece of jewellery which is desirable but corrupting. Sin deforms us. It makes us less human, less ourselves. It isolates us from others. Certainly makes us less human. It may not. The question is it less ourselves, or is it an expression of what we really are as sinners? That as sinners we are not truly human. That the goal to be truly human is to be righteous and holy. And when we're not righteous and holy, we're not really human. So, it's interesting that when this explanation that he desires this hoard of treasure and gets it, but it does not make him good, but it destroys him. And in this, there's this exploration of desire, that we have things, pleasures and treasures. We desire them, we crave them, we go after them, and maybe even get them. But what does it do to us to get them? Well, what does it do to us to pursue them? But then when we imagine if we get them, that we'll be better, we'll be contented, we'll be satisfied. But it doesn't do that to us. It actually diminishes us and corrupts us, defiles us. When our selfish desires are given free rein, or when we indulge them, even for a time, we discover that far from being, we discover that we can sometimes be disgusted with ourselves because of our greed, or our anger, or our pride, or lust, or whatever it is. We're disgusted, we're disappointed with ourselves, and we found that we might have thought we were something great or something wonderful, and then we discover we're actually something quite monstrous. Like Eustace becomes the lonely, tormented dragon. And he's not a contented social angel, but this miserable dragon. Now, he tries to fix himself. Eustace tries to shed his dragon's skin. And he scratches and he claws to get rid of the dragon's skin. And he thinks he can fix himself, even by hurting himself, by putting himself through a painful process. But each time, the skin grows back. Because he is a dragon. That's what he is. So he's trying to fix himself superficially by, in a way, appearing not to be a dragon by clawing off the skin. But that he can't save himself. He can't, because that's what he is. That's his nature. And again, C.S. Lewis is giving us this deep thing that, we might be able to superficially appear not to be a dragon. But underneath, what is still there? What desires are still there? What corruption and defilement and shame and guilt is still there? What are we? What are we underneath the civilized veneer? Well, Eustace's hope is lost all hope, and he's miserable. But then Aslan appears, and this is so powerful because what Aslan does is attacks him, and he tears into Eustace's skin, ripping it away layer by layer, and it's an incredibly painful process of stripping him, and he has to be attacked, and then until eventually the boy is left raw and vulnerable, exposed. And then Aslan throws him into the water, and he emerges a boy again. So it's a process, like a painful process of conviction of his sin and rottenness being confronted, and this because Aslan is causing this great pain to him, ripping into him. Because what we sometimes wish, we'll say, will call out to God to take away our sins or bad desires, and what we want is him to just magically wave a wand, and that suddenly we don't ever feel those things or desire those things, or we'll never lose our temper again, and that it all be done painlessly and magically and instantaneously. But that is extremely rare in the Christian life. What he does is says, no, we will get rid of those things, but we want to do it in such a way as it's a process of learning. And I'm going to show you how those things can be torn away and put to death and smashed. And it's a process of doing that. So that's what happens. Eustace, and then of course it's like a baptism, thrown into the water, and he emerges a boy again, like it's a new birth. This is sanctification. This is this gracious rescue that Christ alone can do, and Eustace cannot contribute to it at all. It has to be all that Aslan does, and Eustace receives it by simply trusting, and he's barely doing that. We cannot peel away our own sin. We cannot save ourselves. Only Christ can. And though his work may hurt, it's the only way to be made new, to be born again. And I love this focus on ontology, on what we are. It's not just a status, a legal status. That the whole issue of a legal status is part of the gospel. But right underneath this thing about you must be born again, a transformation of what you are, or Jesus uses the language of a tree. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree produces good fruit. So what kind of tree are we? That's a particularly powerful example, because how can you become a different kind of tree? So Eustace's transformation is one of the most powerful images of salvation in all of children's literature. It is unforgettable because it is so true. Sanctification is not self-improvement. It's a surrender to Christ alone, faith alone, Christ alone, and it can be a painful work. Well, then our next theme is this way that the entire journey of the Dawn Treader is a pilgrimage towards Aslan's country. Each island is a stage on the journey. Each challenge is a test. So from the Lone Islands, slavery must be abolished. To Deathwater Island, where greed for gold nearly destroys them. To the Dark Island, where nightmares come true. And then Ramandu's island, where they meet the star's daughter. And finally, to the edge of the world, where the sea grows sweet and the light grows stronger. It's this picture of Christian life, a journey of testing, of growth, of longing for the far country, and passing through times that seem as if you're not near it at all, as if you're further away, perhaps, and yet it is all going. And at the end, Reepicheep, this valiant mouse, sails alone into Aslan's country. His whole life has been a preparation for this moment. He's longing for this. Nothing satisfies him other than this. His courage, his honour, his longing, all pointing toward this final homecoming. And this was the book that, for me, in my teenage years, it was this book and then the next one in the series, The Silver Chair. These were the two books that spoke most powerfully to me, more than any of the others. At that time, then later, The Magician's Nephew became and included with those. Those were the three. But particularly this book spoke to me because of this concept of the mystical journey in my teenage years, and there was something about this, like to be dissatisfied with this present mortal life, this present darkness, this passing age, and to be like trying to push in to an experience of the third heaven, the highest heaven, to yearn for that, long for that. And it's like with those desert fathers from so long ago who put themselves through extraordinary physical conditions and fasting because they were like that Reepicheep kind of idea that they couldn't be satisfied with anything other than Christ and his country. And you get it in all kinds of writings. There's the books that really spoke to me when I was really feeling this. There's that book, The Cloud of Unknowing, and these are like English mystics, but you get mystics from all kinds of Christian countries and cultures. The Cloud of Unknowing, the Richard Rolle, The Fire of Love, this character from more northern England, and he, Richard Rolle of Hampole, and he has this experience of the love of Christ that is so intense he cannot bear it. The fire it's like a burning experience of the reality of the living God. Thomas à Kempis in The Imitation of Christ, it's full of that kind of wisdom of it's not enough just to have right ideas or pious thoughts, or even if we're satisfied with a low level of experience of Christ, what's the matter with us? We need to be pushing into the full, life of the Trinity, to participate in the divine nature, and to flee sin, flee the world, the flesh, and the devil, and go after this life of God, the fullness of God. Everything has been provided for us, says Peter, so that we can escape the corruptions of this world and participate in the divine nature. And that's this long... Reepicheep has that. I also came across it with the Puritan Thomas Goodwin, this vision of the sealing of the Spirit, his amazing book on the work of the Spirit, and that there's this available to us, a warm, living experience of the very person of the Spirit, that this is not just theory or legal status. It's not just that there's available to us an encounter with and an experience of the Spirit, even in this life that is so powerful and extraordinary. Thomas Brooks calls it heaven on earth, to have that level of assurance of heaven and the experience of the living God. And all of this calls us on to the far country of the Father's home. The more we taste of that, as the Spirit is that a taste of that future reality of the resurrection future and the heavenly home and all of that. And the Spirit now will give us tastes and samples, deposits of that, so that we want to be absent from the body and present with the Lord Jesus, to be discontent with living a life of exile. And so it makes us, if we're like that, if we've tasted this heavenly reality, so we're longing for the far country and live that way, and it shows up in our values, our thinking, our desires, we live with a light grip on this passing mortal life. So we're always... This podcast and all my work depends entirely on donations. It's only through your support that all this research and teaching can be free for so many. If you're in a position to help, please consider supporting the mission by giving to the Biblical Frameworks charity. Find out how at biblicalframeworks.com and look for the Give link. Thank you. Ready and eager to set off, to sail across the sea, the final waters, to go to Aslan's home at the birthplace of light itself. Hebrews 11, 8-10. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, he obeyed and went without knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the promised land as a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise, because he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Peter, the whole of what is that first letter of Peter, we are refugees, exiles, and he says, live like that, as foreigners. Live as foreigners, exiled from your true home, but longing for it. And that causes others to ask of you, what is it about you? Where are you going? What are you longing for? What is this Father's house? What is this far country? What is this highest heaven? What is this paradise? Who is this Christ, this Aslan that you believe in, that I can't see, but you love him, though you haven't seen him? So C.S. Lewis in this novel is reminding us that the Christian life, it's not about staying put, it's static. It's not just a kind of static status. It's moving forward, pilgrimage, longing for the place where the sea grows sweet and the lion waits. Every Christian, then, we need to be pilgrims, journeying on. And so let me just deal with this another theme of testing, temptation, because along the way, the crew of the Dawn Treader face many temptations. Caspian is tempted by pride and power. Edmund and Lucy are tempted by greed and vanity. Even Reepicheep must learn humility. He doesn't have much of that, but he must learn it. And each island that they visit is a mirror, revealing what lies in their hearts. And again, it's an outward journey, geographical journey, but it's actually, as we keep noticing, it's an inner journey. And they're discovering not just the geographical world, they're discovering the inner world. And sins are being brought to attention. As they near Aslan's country, so sins must be confronted and addressed. And it's part of C.S. Lewis's genius. He shows us that the real battles are in the end not against witches or giants or armies, but against pride, greed, fear, selfishness. Hebrews tells us that, doesn't it? When the Lord says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Therefore, don't be selfish, don't be sexually immoral, don't be greedy. Learn to give, learn to share, learn to be pure and holy, because the battles we face, and he will come and fight with us and for us. But those are the battles. The voyage, then, to Aslan's country is testing, and through each test, in the story, the characters grow, they're refined, they're prepared for a greater journey ahead, and that is Christian discipleship. The Christian life is not free from temptation. It is shaped by it. The temptations and trials are essential to the Christian pilgrimage and journey because they reveal who we are, what we are. The whole experience in Deuteronomy where Jesus says, I made you hungry in order to discover what was in your heart. That time of temptation and testing, hunger and thirst and the intense desires and cravings, all of that he brought immediately to the ancient church in the wilderness, in the Exodus, because he wanted to find out what was in their hearts. What did they really need? What did they really desire? And it's in that testing and trial and temptation that, well, that's how we are formed, by going through that. So let's pull it together. What does the voyage of why does the voyage of the Dawn Treader matter? Well, because it shows us that the Christian life is a journey, not a destination. When we start to follow Jesus, we are starting to follow him. Where's he going? Where's he taking us? It's an adventure. It's a journey. It's a pilgrimage. And on this journey, we are going to face testing and trial and temptation. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader shows us that transformation is Christ's work, not ours. We cannot save ourselves. We cannot give ourselves a new birth. We cannot make ourselves into something good and pure and holy. We cannot make ourselves into a good tree if we are a bad tree. Only Christ can bring about new birth by the power of the Spirit. It teaches us that temptation is not this. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader teaches us that temptation is not a distraction from discipleship. It's the arena in which discipleship happens. That the testing, the trial, the tough times, that's how we progress. But most of all, the Dawn Treader, I think, the thing that I take from it is I feel it does awaken in us a longing for the far country, where the sea grows sweet and where the lion waits. So here's my invitation to you. Read The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but read it as your own story. Where are you on the journey? What dragons cling to your skin, waiting for Aslan to tear them away? What temptations test your heart? What longings draw you toward the far country? I love Francis Thompson's wonderful poem, The Hound of Heaven. The Hound of Heaven pursuing him down the years. And in it, he talks about how all the things that he longed for and dreamed about and wanted, the things that seemed most precious to him, and they were the things that seemed heavy, like the things that seemed most beautiful and good, sort of things that he was trying to get hold of as on earth. And this Hound of Heaven would take them all away, take from him all the things that he seemed to want the most. And the poem comes to this wonderful conclusion that it's not that the Hound of Heaven takes them away from him now on earth, in his earthly journey, not so that he could never have these good things, but that we would find all these good, beautiful, wonderful things in their true home, at their source, in him. And that if we pursue these things and we think we can find them in this mortal passing age, and then Christ may strip us of them, snatch them away from us, and we might say, why has he done that? And it's because he's saying, because I want you to have those things in their true form, at their source, in a form where you can enjoy them forever, eternally, safely, in my presence, from me, in a new created universe. So Reepicheep's courage, Eustace's transformation, Caspian's testing, these aren't just fairy tale moments. They're about deep discipleship, sanctification, pilgrimage. In our next episode, we're going to descend underground in the silver chair. But until then, may your voyage be guided by the lion, your heart be transformed by him, and your eyes fixed on his country.